I was halfway through a beer and a mindless crime show rerun when I heard the pounding. It wasn't the polite kind of knock you get from a neighbor. It was sharp, frantic, and way too loud for 2 a.m. My first thought was that someone in my building had locked themselves out again. My second thought was that it was probably trouble. In the military, you learn pretty quickly that nothing good happens after midnight. I pulled on the hoodie hanging over the chair and walked to the door. The pounding came again, faster this time, followed by a voice I hadn't heard in months. "Maddie, please, open up." It was my sister, Savannah. My stomach tightened. We don't do surprise visits, not after the way things have been in the family. I flipped the deadbolt and cracked the door just enough to see her. She was swaying on her feet, hair stuck to her face, one eye swollen shut, clutching Chloe, her 8-year-old daughter, tight to her chest. Chloe was in her wheelchair, her little hands gripping the armrest so hard her knuckles were white. I yanked the door open and reached for Savannah as her knees buckled. She collapsed against me with a groan. Chloe's wheelchair caught on the doorframe, and I had to angle it in with one hand while supporting Savannah with the other. I got them both inside, pushed the door shut with my foot, and scanned them quickly. Savannah's jacket was hanging open. Her shirt was torn. And when I shifted her weight, she winced and clutched her side. I didn't need a medic badge to know she was hurt. Before I could even think about what to do next, my phone buzzed on the counter. I almost ignored it, but something made me grab it. It was a text from Mom. "Don't save that cripple, she's a traitor." I just stared at the screen for a second. Patricia Blake, the woman who raised us, the one who made me recite "Family Comes First," like it was the national anthem, had just told me to let my sister and niece fend for themselves. I put the phone face down on the counter and focused on Savannah. "You're safe now. Sit here." I eased her onto the couch, grabbed a blanket from the back, and draped it over her. Her breathing was shallow, and she kept her arm wrapped tight around her ribs. Chloe didn't say a word, just sat in her chair holding a silver necklace. It was an old piece, one our grandmother used to wear, and I hadn't seen it in years. The way she was gripping it, you'd think it was the only thing holding her together. I crouched down. "Chloe, are you hurt?" She shook her head, eyes big and darting toward her mom. Savannah looked like she was trying to stay upright by sheer willpower. Her lips were pale, and there was a smear of blood on her chin. "Don't call Mom," she said weakly. "Not a problem," I told her, because Mom was the last person I'd be calling. I went to the kitchen, grabbed the field first aid kit I keep under the sink habit from years in the military police, and returned to the couch. My hands were steady enough to cut away the loose threads around the tear in her shirt, but my jaw was clenched so tight it hurt. There was a nasty purple bruise blooming over her ribs and a shallow cut just above her hip. "This needs a real doctor," I said. "Please, don't send me back," she murmured. That stopped me. "Back where?" She didn't answer, just closed her eyes. I looked at Chloe again. She was still watching everything, silent, the necklace glinting in her hand. Her wheelchair was old, the kind you get from the cheapest insurance plan. The left brake didn't even look like it locked properly. I decided right then I wasn't going to waste time asking for permission. I pulled my phone from my pocket and hit 911. "Porter County emergency," the dispatcher answered. "What's your emergency?" "My sister just showed up at my apartment," I said, keeping my voice level. "She's hurt badly. I think it's domestic violence." They asked for the address, and I gave it. The dispatcher kept me on the line, asking about Savannah's condition, if there were weapons involved, if the suspect was nearby. My eyes went to the door, half expecting it to start shaking again. Savannah opened her good eye and looked at me. "You don't know the whole story," she said, voice barely above a whisper. "I'm starting to figure that out," I told her. The dispatcher said help was on the way. I hung up, set the phone down, and grabbed a bottle of water from the kitchen. I pressed it into Savannah's hand, but she just held it without drinking. I pulled a chair over and sat facing them. "Do you need anything right now?" I asked Chloe. She shook her head. I kept my eyes on Savannah. "Do you want to tell me who did this?" She opened her mouth like she was going to speak, then shut it again. Finally, she whispered, "It's worse than you think." There was a knock at the door. Not frantic this time, but firm. I stood, every muscle in my body tensing, and crossed the room. I checked the peephole. It was a paramedic, gear in hand, and an officer standing just behind him. I unlatched the door and let them in, stepping aside so they could reach Savannah. The paramedic knelt beside her, asking questions in a calm, practiced tone. Savannah answered in short bursts, each word costing her effort. The officer looked at me. "Do you know who assaulted her?" I hesitated, glancing at Savannah. She gave the smallest shake of her head. "Not yet," I said finally. The paramedic asked if she could walk. She couldn't. He radioed for a stretcher, and I caught Chloe's eyes following every move. I crouched by her chair. "They're going to help your mom, okay?" She nodded but didn't loosen her grip on the necklace. The second paramedic arrived with the stretcher, and between the two of them, they lifted Savannah gently onto it. I followed them to the door, watching as they maneuvered down the hall. Chloe stayed by my side, and the officer told me we could follow to the hospital if we wanted. I locked the door behind us and wheeled Chloe toward the elevator, already feeling the questions stacking up in my head with no answers yet. The elevator doors slid open, and a blast of humid summer air rushed in from the parking lot as we followed the stretcher toward the ambulance. Chloe's wheelchair rattled over the concrete, the sound sharp in the quiet. I kept one hand on her chair and the other hovering near my holster out of habit, scanning for anyone who didn't belong. They loaded Savannah into the back, strapping her down with quick, practiced movements. One of the paramedics asked if I was riding with them. I glanced at Chloe, then stepped up into the back, locking her chair in place beside the stretcher. The officer climbed in too, taking the seat near the rear doors. The ambulance started moving, siren off but lights flashing. Savannah's eyes were half open, fixed on the ceiling. The paramedic put an oxygen mask over her face and started checking her vitals. I stayed quiet, watching her breathing rise and fall, trying to figure out how someone could get to this point without reaching out for help sooner. Chloe's voice broke the silence. "Grandma was there." I turned toward her. "When?" "Tonight," she said, gripping that necklace so tight her fingers were turning red. "She told me not to talk." I leaned closer, lowering my voice. "Not to talk about what?" Chloe glanced at Savannah, then back at me. "About Kyle." Savannah's hand twitched on the stretcher, but she didn't speak. The officer's eyes flicked between us. "Is Kyle the suspect?" he asked, voice calm, but with that edge cops get when they're filing mental notes. Savannah's voice was muffled under the mask. "Don't tell them yet." I met her gaze. "You really think keeping quiet is going to make this better?" She looked away. The paramedic announced her blood pressure was low, probably from internal bleeding. They'd do x-rays at the hospital. Chloe shifted in her chair, and the wheels squeaked. I crouched beside her. "You okay?" She nodded, but her eyes were glossy. "He said he'd take me away. Said Mom couldn't stop him." That landed like a punch. In my head, I was already running through the steps, protective orders, emergency custody filings, the kind of paperwork most people dread, but I could practically fill out in my sleep thanks to my job. The ambulance pulled into the hospital bay. The back doors swung open, and another team was there to wheel Savannah inside. I pushed Chloe after them, through the sliding glass doors into the blindingly bright ER. They moved Savannah into a curtained-off area, and a nurse came over with a clipboard. "Family?" she asked. "Sister," I said, flashing my military ID without really thinking about it. It wasn't required, but it usually sped things along. They let me stay, and Chloe too, but the officer stepped outside to make some calls. Savannah's vitals beeped steadily from the monitor. The nurse asked if there was a police report yet. I shook my head. Chloe kept staring at the curtain, like she could see through it. I pulled my chair closer. "You want to tell me what happened before you came to my place?" She hesitated, then whispered, "Grandma said Mom deserved it, and that I'd go live somewhere better." My jaw tightened. Patricia always had her favorites, and it was never Savannah. But to stand there and watch her own daughter get hurt, that was something else entirely. A doctor came in, introduced herself, and started explaining the injuries. 2 cracked ribs, possible hairline fracture in her arm, bruising consistent with blunt force trauma. I'd heard those words in enough reports to know what they meant. In plain English, someone beat her badly, and more than once. "Do you want to file a report now or wait until you're feeling stronger?" the doctor asked Savannah. Savannah shook her head. "Not yet." The doctor glanced at me, and I gave a small shrug. We weren't going to get anywhere by pushing her right now. Chloe shifted in her chair, the old metal frame creaking. I reached over and adjusted the blanket around her legs. "You're safe here," I told her. Her eyes searched mine, like she wanted to believe it but wasn't sure. The officer came back in, a small notebook in hand. "I'll need a statement from both of you when you're ready," he said. Savannah gave the smallest nod, still avoiding my eyes. I could read the message she was holding something back. I didn't know if it was fear, shame, or some twisted sense of loyalty to the wrong people, but it was sitting between us like a wall. I stayed by her side while the nurse hooked her up to an IV. Chloe yawned but kept that necklace clutched in her fist. I wondered if she'd even slept the night before, or if this had been building all evening. The sound of my phone buzzing pulled me out of my thoughts. I checked the screen. Another message from Mom. "Don't get involved, Maddie. You'll regret it." I didn't reply. I just slid the phone back into my pocket and leaned back in the chair, already weighing my next move. The nurse had barely stepped away when I shifted my chair closer to Savannah's bed, lowering my voice so Chloe couldn't hear every word. "You need to tell me what happened. All of it." Savannah's eyes moved to Chloe, then back to me. "It started months ago. Kyle's been taking Chloe's disability checks. He says it's for the household, but..." She trailed off, her fingers twisting the edge of the blanket. "But it's not," I said flatly. She gave a slow shake of her head. "He spends it on himself. Trips with his buddies, new tools he never uses, Mom knows. She says I should be grateful he hasn't left yet." That hit like a cold slap. "Grateful?" Savannah's jaw tightened. "Last night, we fought. I told him I wanted Chloe's money put in a separate account. He laughed. Said I was too stupid to handle money. Mom was sitting right there at the kitchen table, drinking her tea, not saying a word. I could picture it perfectly, Patricia's stone face, pretending nothing was wrong while the whole place went up in flames. He got angry," Savannah continued. "Told me I was nothing without him. Then he grabbed me. I tried to push him off, but he shoved me into the counter. That's when I felt something snap in my side. My hands curled into fists in my lap. And Mom?" Savannah's voice went even quieter. "She told me to stop making a scene." I stared at her. "She watched him hurt you and said nothing?" "She told Chloe to go to her room. When I grabbed Chloe's wheelchair to leave, Mom blocked the door. She said if I walked out, I was on my own. No help, no money, no family." My stomach turned. "And yet she still texted me to leave you outside." Savannah's lips trembled. But she didn't cry. "I didn't think you'd answer the door." "Duh. You thought wrong," I said, sharper than I intended. Chloe glanced up from her chair, sensing the tension. I forced my voice back down. "Where's Kyle now?" "I don't know. He might still be at Mom's. Or he's out drinking. He usually disappears after nights like that." I sat back, feeling the anger settle into something colder, more precise. This wasn't just about him. Mom was part of it, enabling him, maybe even benefiting from it. "Savannah, do you have any proof of what he's been doing with the money?" She hesitated, then nodded. "Bank statements. They're in a folder in my closet. But the account's in his name, with Mom as a co-signer. My name's not on it. I only see the deposits because the VA still sends me letters." That was enough to start a paper trail. I didn't need to touch the account to start pulling records, not if she gave me authorization. "You're going to give me permission to access whatever you can," I told her. "We're not going to play nice about this. Not anymore." The officer came back in, glancing at his notepad. "Any updates?" he asked me. "Working on it," I said, which was technically true. He gave Savannah a polite smile. "When you're ready, we'll take your statement. You can also request a victim's advocate if you want someone with you." She nodded faintly. After he left, I pulled my phone out and started typing in note names, dates, everything Savannah had just told me. If I was going to build a case, it needed to be airtight. Military police training wasn't just for chasing soldiers who went AWOL. It made you good at building timelines, linking evidence, and keeping emotions out of the paperwork. Savannah shifted on the bed, wincing. "You can't let this mess up your job, Maddie." I looked her straight in the eye. "My job is protecting people. That doesn't stop at the gate." Her shoulders eased just a fraction. Chloe reached over and took her mom's hand, the necklace still dangling from her other fist. I glanced at the clock. It was pushing 3:30 in the morning, but my brain was wide awake. Kyle and Patricia had crossed a line, and I wasn't the type to let that slide. I leaned back in the chair, already planning my next step, and kept my voice steady when I spoke again. We're going to make sure this never happens to you or Chloe again. The hallway outside the ER room smelled like burnt coffee and antiseptic as I stepped out to make a call. I dialed a number I knew by heart, Staff Sergeant Hill over at CID. It was late, but Hill was a night owl, the kind of guy who answered on the first ring. Maddie? You on duty? Not officially, I said. But I've got a situation. Domestic violence, possible financial exploitation tied to VA benefits. Victim's my sister. Suspects are her husband and our mother. There was a pause. That's messy. Yeah. I need to know how much I can dig without crossing into unauthorized access. Hill sighed. You know the drill. If she signs a release, you can gather her personal financial records. But anything tied to his VA claim? That's federal. Get it the wrong way. You're the one in hot water. Got it. Thanks. I hung up and went back inside. Savannah was propped up a little higher now, looking more awake. I pulled a folded form from my bag, standard power of attorney template I kept for emergencies. Sign this. It lets me act on your behalf for banking and benefits inquiries. I'll make copies for the court later. She hesitated. Is this really going to help? It's going to start a trail they can't erase, I said. She signed, her handwriting shaky but legible. I took a photo of the form immediately, just in case. Sitting at the small table in the corner, I opened my laptop. The hospital Wi-Fi was slow, but it did the job. Using the routing number from Savannah's most recent benefit letter, I traced it through public records and cross-referenced it with bank location codes. The account was in both Kyle Merrick's and Patricia Blake's names. Scrolling through linked transactions, I hit a list of merchant codes that made my teeth clench. Vegas resort charges, a Florida condo deposit, high-end sporting goods stores. Not a single payment to anything that even sounded like it might help Chloe. I turned the screen so Savannah could see. This is where Chloe's money went. Her lips pressed together hard, eyes filling but not spilling over. Chloe was quiet, but she'd rolled her chair closer. She looked at the screen and then at me. Grandma said it was for the family. Chloe, I said gently, taking your money without permission isn't helping the family. She looked down, fidgeting with the necklace. I saved every screenshot, every traceable number. Then I encrypted the folder and backed it up twice. Years in the service had taught me that you don't keep one copy of anything that matters. Savannah shifted. If they find out you're digging, they'll… I don't know. Kyle can get mean fast. Let him, I said. Means easier to handle than clever. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. You stick your nose in, you'll lose your stripes. I tilted the screen so Savannah could see. Kyle? She nodded once. I deleted the message, but not before taking a screenshot. Harassment from the suspect, another piece of the puzzle. A nurse came in to check Savannah's vitals, and I stepped into the hall again. I called Hill back. Got a co-signed account, non-beneficiary spending. Suspect just sent a threatening text. That enough to raise flags? Enough to get Va Oig interested, Hill said. But tread carefully. Your family, so anything you dig up personally might get challenged. Let a lawyer run point. I already knew which one, Deborah Langley. She'd chewed up worse cases and spat them out in neat court victories. I made a note to call her in the morning. Back inside, Chloe had dozed off in her chair, still holding the necklace. Savannah was watching her like she was afraid to blink. Get some rest, I told her. I'll be here when you wake up. End of 2. She closed her eyes, but I could tell she wasn't sleeping yet. My mind was already running through what came next. Legal filings, protective orders, securing those bank records before they vanished. One thing was certain. I wasn't letting Patricia and Kyle keep control of anything that belonged to Chloe. The sun was just burning through the early haze when I pulled into my assigned parking spot back at the base housing. I'd left Savannah and Chloe at the hospital with a security detail I trusted, figuring it was safer to put some distance between them and anyone who might try to finish what was started. I hadn't even gotten my boots off when there was a knock at my door, 2 slow taps, a pause, then 2 more. The kind of rhythm people use when they think you'll open up just because they sound friendly. I checked the peephole. Kyle Merrick, wearing a clean shirt and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. I opened the door just far enough to block him with my shoulder. You're not supposed to be here. He gave a little chuckle. Relax. I'm just here to clear the air. We're all family, right? Wrong, I said flatly. Kyle leaned on the frame like he owned it. Savannah likes to make me out as the bad guy when she's the one with the problems. I take care of things, Maddie, always have. But she's been running her mouth to you, and I don't appreciate it. I didn't blink. She didn't have to say much. The bruises spoke for her. His smile twitched. You're making a mistake getting involved. You've got a career you care about, yeah? Be a shame if your CO heard you were misusing your position. I let the silence stretch, then slowly lifted my phone from my pocket and tilted it so the red recording dot was visible.